Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Got GAWL podcast, brought to you by the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. I am Ebony Phillips, I'm your host, and we are still in the midst of our Imposter Syndrome series, and we're calling it, Who Do You Think You Are? And tonight we are going to delve into the 5 types of imposter syndrome. This is the third part of this series. Part 1 was general overview, ladies in the legal profession sharing their experiences. Part 2, we talked about the 4 P's of imposter syndrome: perfectionism, paralysis, procrastination. And part 3 tonight is going to be the 5 types. But before I delve into that, I want to tell you who I have with me because we're lucky. We have Dr. Ericka Goodwin with us tonight. She's been here for this whole journey we're doing on unpacking imposter syndrome for part 1 and part 2. And Dr. Ericka Goodwin is on a mission to help you be better, do better, and live better. She's a Harvard-trained, double board certified psychiatrist, a best-selling author, a top-rated speaker, an integrative lifestyle coach, and the creator of the hit podcast, Be Better with Dr. Ericka. She also has a weekly show on YouTube called Growth Groove. Hey, Dr. Ericka.
Hey!
I'm so happy you agreed to do this not once, not twice, but 3 times. Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you on.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I love GAWL. And plus, the name is cool.
GAWL loves you right back. GAWL loves you right back. Dr. Ericka, we have the pleasure of being joined today by 2 giants in the legal profession. We have with us Brittney Martin, who is a native of Atlanta. She was born and raised in the Linwood Park community and earned a bachelor's degree in legal communications from Howard University. She also got her law degree from Howard. While she was there, she was a student attorney in the Fair Housing Clinic. She worked for a Superior Court judge there, came back home to Atlanta, did some family law work, worked at the City of Atlanta Public Defender's Office. Her very first year, she was awarded Rookie of the Year, did some more family law stuff, but basically just a heavy hitter in the profession. Brittney is not a very old woman. She's actually quite young. She's probably not going to like me for saying that, but I mentioned that because when you hear all the things she's done, you're like, well, how could one person who's not even old yet have done all that? So perspective on what a great person and a wonderful lawyer she is. The other thing about Brittney is that she has a helper spirit, right? And a helper's mentality. And one of the things that people cling to is the fact that whatever she touches, she's going to want to make it better than she found it, whether that's her work, the community, or any organization that she's involved with. So, hey, Brittney.
Hi, everyone. Ebony, thank you so much for those words. I appreciate it. And, on topic, I can admit I had a bit of imposter syndrome just listening. I'm like, is she talking about me? But you are, and that's why I'm here. So I appreciate you for having me, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you for coming on. Dr. Ericka, we also have attorney Marcy Hanks with us. Marcy is a founding partner of Hanks, Ballard, and Barth, and that's in Monroe, Georgia. Now, I'm going to break that down a little bit. So in addition to being a lawyer, which is a feat in and of itself, she's also a partner, which is another feat, but she's also a founding partner, okay? So when I say we have legal juggernauts with us, this is what I'm talking about. Before she went into private practice, she spent several years as an assistant district attorney. She's practiced family law exclusively for the past 20 years, and she's the current president of our East Metro GAWL chapter. We are a statewide organization with chapters from north to south to east to west and all in between in Georgia. Marcy is our president for East Metro, and when she's not in the courtroom, she can be found enjoying the lake with her husband, who is also her law partner. That's also a feat in my mind, but I'm gonna leave that for another episode. And their teenage daughter and their lovable dog. And what I can say about Marcy is Marcy always raises her hand. If somebody needs X, Marcy raises her hand. I got you. If the organization needs something, oh, okay, I got that. If, you know, and to me, I was doing some self work about around having better boundaries and building parameters and all of that. And then listening to Marcy, sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I went too far to the left. Maybe I need to steer back just a little bit, because she is amazing. GAWL is very lucky to have her as our East Metro president. She also helped. One of the things that we did with the organization this year is for our student chapters, we started our mentorship program just for our student chapters. So that's different from what we're doing for our geographic chapters and those who are already barred. And Marcy did the heavy lift on all of that for the East Metro chapter. I think I mentioned it one time, and I didn't even necessarily say, Marcy, can you help? I just looked up and it was done, because that's who Marcy is. So thank you so much for coming on, Marcy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm like Brittney. I don't know that I'm listening to you and I'm like, who is she talking about? So, wow. Thank you very much for those kind words.
You're very welcome. You're both sheroes of mine, in addition to Dr. Ericka. And so I had said that we were going to dive into the 5 P's of the imposter syndrome, and we'll do that in a minute. But I wanted to just, excuse me, the 5 types of imposter syndrome. But before we delve into that part of it, I'm just curious. You both said that you've thought about a little bit of imposter syndrome when I was sort of introducing you. What kind of made you feel that way? You can start, Brittney.
Few things. I did do just a little bit of homework in preparation. I read up a little bit about the 5 types and some of the qualities, and it's just not being able to accept praise. So hearing the kind words said about me and not really identifying them, although they're true. I had some accomplishments, but I'm the type of person, once I accomplish something, I move on to the next thing. So I don't take a lot of time to sit in them, to process them, to really take them on as part of my journey. So when I'm reminded, I'm like, oh, is that me? Okay, oh, sure. Hi. It's an interesting feeling. So, but it is something that I think is an important conversation. So I'm glad to be here and to be learning more about it, because I do think I can identify with it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And one of the main things we want to do is normalize the conversation around this, because what I think sometimes happens is that people, and women especially, and Dr. Ericka can speak to this more, we just think we're the only ones, right, that are going through a certain thing. And so we're not talking about it. And because we're not talking about it, perhaps we're not getting the support around it and all the things. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But I'm curious, Marcy, you said you had a similar reaction that as to Brittney when I was introducing you as well. What made you feel that way?
So Brittney, I mean, she hit the nail on the head, but I do think we just, I guess, as people, and particularly women, I think we're much more susceptible to this than men are, but we tend to see our shortcomings as opposed to our strengths. And so whereas you, Ebony, you see the positives in us, Brittney and I are more focused on what did we not get right today? What did we not? And that just, we dwell on the negatives instead of the positives. And so it's so easy to get caught up in, everyone else seems to be smarter or better or balancing it better than I am. And it's something that I don't think up until recently, it was even something we were aware of. I mean, I hadn't heard of imposter syndrome until relatively recently. And this is not something that's new. I think throughout all of our lives, we've probably dealt with this in one way or another. So I think it's great that GAWL in particular is focusing on this so that we can bring everyone's attention to it, talk about it, make everyone realize it's not unusual. This is something we all deal with every day.
Thank you for sharing that, Marcy. I appreciate it. Now, Dr. Ericka.
Yes.
You heard their responses to the question. And in that, I'm just wondering if the 5 types kind of resonated or kind of like poked their heads out, if any of the 5 types poke their heads out. I had originally planned for us to just go like, okay, type number 1, what is that? Type number 2, what is that? But I feel like the conversation probably is leaning towards just weaving in shared experiences, and then wherever the 5 types fit in, then we can certainly plug them in. But as a doctor who helps people deal with the imposter syndrome, is any of what they've said surprising to you?
No. Well, it wasn't surprising before we started doing this. It really isn't surprising after this is time number 3, because I think one of the things that's come up every time I'm in a room with especially female attorneys is the culture of becoming an attorney is not one that tends to be naturally affirming.
Mm.
And it also tends to be very competitive.
Yeah.
And then you finish and you're competitive some more. So it's not necessarily an environment where people are getting a lot of affirmation and support just naturally. That just doesn't appear to be the general culture. So I'm not surprised that by the time you make it to this point in your career that I'd be surprised if there weren't moments where you didn't have those doubts. I'd be surprised if you didn't have them.
And so we had talked from before about this really being prevalent for women. And since this is a women's organization, I wonder if you could speak to that really, really quickly.
Part of the reason it's very prevalent for women is you look at just the way women are socialized. And originally when the concept even came up, they described it in women, even though it is not necessarily gender specific. But if you take one group of people who are socialized that there's this one singular narrative, and it's to pretty much just be a caregiver to support everyone else, that you may not have been supposed to even be some high level professional. You weren't designed to be an attorney. You were designed to be a housewife or a teacher. That there's no shock that women would have imposter syndrome because you're told no so many times, or the images are no, and the images are that when a lot of us were growing up, I think there are some things that are a little bit different now where you are seeing more women in the media in leadership positions and in some of these positions, but just growing up feeling like this was things that men did.
Yeah.
Being told these are things that men did, and being told over and over again that your place is in the home or with your family. And then also that for a lot of the women in GAWL, because you all in general are professional working women, is this push-pull that it's hard to feel like you're doing something well because there's always something that's not well. That the expectation is that you be the same type of mom you'd be if you were a homemaker, but you're working. And then the expectation is that you work and have the same productivity and do things the exact same way as a man who stereotypically does not have so many responsibilities at home. It's like a gaslighting setup.
It's a setup, Dr. Ericka.
It's a setup. You've been bamboozled. Hoodwinked. Run amok, led astray.
They have set us up. So let's get into the 5 types of imposter syndrome, Dr. Ericka. And you can start wherever you are led to start.
I mean, I'm torn because there are so many places to start. I would probably start with the ones that I hear people describe probably the most, which is, I feel like every time we start having these conversations around being a perfectionist come up. So I think that's probably a good place to start. The first thing we can do is actually say what they are. So there's the perfectionist, the soloist, the superwoman or man, or is there a super non-binary situation? The natural genius. And I like that I think natural genius makes it a little bit more understandable than just genius. The soloist and the expert. And I think for a lot of people, perfectionism comes up a lot. And that's just the feeling like everything has to be perfect, that any small I wouldn't even say a small mistake, but something that's below 100%, if you get 99 or 98, that's a failure. And to me, that's one of the things I hear so often from people. And one of the ways we have all this negative self-talk is this feeling that we're supposed to be perfect. And not only are we supposed to be perfect, you're supposed to be perfect at everything.
Yeah.
Who's perfect at everything? Steve Jobs was brilliant. He wasn't perfect at everything.
Right. Right.
According to the documentaries, he wasn't a good dad. The same.
So I'll throw to you, Marcy. Can you relate to any of that, any of the perfectionist tendencies or?
Oh, absolutely. I think that probably most of the members of GAWL can. I mean, typically law school, you're going to have had to work hard in college to get into law school. Then you got to work hard in law school. Then you got to work hard to pass the bar. And it's just a constant, race to, you have to be at the top to be able to achieve the next thing, or else what are you going to do? I mean, if you don't do well enough, what are you going to do if you don't get that next step? And then it's the same thing. Then you're out working, and then you have to do well enough to get hired, or to, get promoted, or to win cases so clients will come back and hire you. It's just a constant struggle, I think, of this bar that we probably all set too high and expect to be able to achieve, even though we're very understanding of other people and tell them, look, you're doing great. You can't be perfect. We tell others that, but that's not the voice that we tell ourselves. And I think that's, obviously something we all have to work on. And it's a struggle every day for me.
Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Brittney? Can you relate to that at all? Perfectionist?
Absolutely. And I even have people in my life who will identify that to me and say, you're such a perfectionist, or you're so hard on yourself, or you set these unrealistic expectations for yourself, and they're trying to understand why. And they're like, but you're so great at this. Why don't you believe it? Or why don't you see what I see? And in my head, as Marcy mentioned, the first thing I'm doing is evaluating all the things that I could have done better. And that's my marker for how I do better the next time. I'm totally ignoring anything that I did well, and I'm going straight for what I fell short at, because in my mind, if I can check those things off the next time, I can better hit the mark to be, which I don't identify it as perfectionist or perfect in my head, but that's what it is. Like that's what I'm striving for. And although I won't identify it that way. And even as Dr. Ericka mentioned, she mentioned the difference in men and women. Honestly, I truly believe, and everyone please chime in and let me know, I believe that men are given much more grace in the law than women are. And because we see it, and because we experience it, either we experience it visually, we see it happening, or we experience it to us. We see a colleague maybe make a mistake that it's completely brushed under the rug, or an excuse is made for them, but we don't get the same grace. I think then it reinforces that voice in our head that we have to do better. We have to hit the mark. And then, as you said, it just creates this unrealistic expectation for us that our male counterparts don't have.
I agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I was just thinking about myself, even because I totally identify with this whole perfectionist thing. Like, I never called it that. I always, I guess in a way try to make myself feel better about it by calling it, I'm just diligent, or I'm just careful, or I'm just all the things. But when I look over my life and I think about the number of things that I double, or maybe not double check is probably good, but I don't feel like I need to quadruple check everything I do. And then because if I believed I was competent, I probably wouldn't be doing that, right? But over the course of your life, at least for me, it just hit me like a ton of bricks how much time I've lost, like quadruple checking everything is and things that are not even significant, like just and I've been doing that since I was a kid, so I've lost a lot of time doing that, and I've called it all these other things, but really it's the imposter syndrome. I just, have to accept that and try to work on it. But I also think that you make a valid point, Brittney. I know I've been in workspaces where men get way more grace. They get way more latitude, way more consideration, and they're not expected to perform always at the level that women are expected to perform. And men are able to be like, well, yeah, I'm not coming in Friday. I'm just tired, or I need a brain break, or I need a. But if a woman were to take that approach, then it's frowned upon almost. Like, why can't you be here Friday? You know, your neck's not broken. You should be able to show up and perform like you performed Monday through Thursday. And I think that's why conversations like this are good, because as women, I feel like we need to push back against a lot of that stuff. Like, it's not going to change as long as we continue to do it and continue to perform. So thank you for making that point. Dr. Ericka, the next type you want to go into?
This is tough. I think we'll go to the expert.
Okay.
This is kind of fun. So the expert, the thing about that type, and what I'd like to say is there are times where people are probably either a combination or they move in and out of different ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the expert is about how much you know, that you have to know everything about everything. So if there's something you don't know, then that feels like a failure. And I feel like it goes with perfectionism in some ways, of the fact that this feeling like you have to literally know everything. And what happens when you think you have to know everything? You probably don't ask for help. So you're trying to do it all because you're trying to demonstrate that you know everything. And just this feeling of failure and loss if there's something that you don't know, which, as you were mentioning, that a lot of times there are other people that have grace, that there's not an expectation that they know everything. And a lot of times we're taught that you're supposed to know how to do everything. And we're brought up in cultures where you're not brought up in a culture, especially being African-American, of asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah. What do y'all think about that, ladies? Can you relate to the expert?
I can relate to that. Sometimes I will, let's say there's a legal issue, something I'm not sure, that rather than ask one of my law partners or a friend, I expect that, why didn't I know that? Instead, I'm going to go look and search and spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to find it on my own, as opposed to asking somebody else who might already know it, simply because in my mind, then they're going to think that I'm not as smart as they might already think I am. That they're going to think, I can't believe she didn't know that. She didn't remember the Hardman case, she didn't remember this, so there are many times that I feel like I'm supposed to know all of this. And if I don't, why don't I? When none of us know all of this. I mean, we don't give ourselves the grace that we should in situations like that. So I definitely understand and identify with that.
What about you, Brittney?
Same. And I think it really comes out when I'm preparing for a hearing or a trial, because my mind tells me I need to make sure that I know everything. If an issue comes up, or if I'm asked something from the judge, or opposing counsel brings up an argument, I need to be prepared. So what does that lead me to do? Go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And it might not even be an issue. The percentage of that coming up might be very small, but in my mind, I need to be prepared for whatever may come up. And so again, as Marcy stated, that leads me to spending tons of time focusing on something that may not even come up, but I just cannot risk not being ready. And so again, that goes to perfectionism, like you mentioned. But yeah, I think that's where the expert comes up. I feel like I've got to know it. And if I don't know it in front of my client, then they're going to think I'm not competent. And why am I representing them? And they're going to want to let me go. And all of it, likely not true. But that's what's circulating in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Dr. Ericka, what's next?
No. Brittney had me thinking, because I think we talked about it the last time. Is I work in Massachusetts, and when we do commitment hearings, it's a zoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had me. I was about to have like PTSD from being in those hearings. Like, what happened in the emergency room 42 days ago? What did the nurse on second shift write?
Oh, you gotta flip through your notes really quickly.
A question like that. I'm like, I didn't memorize every single note, and
Yeah.
I don't work in the emergency room.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
stressful. Yeah.
Like for real, for real. I think we'll go next to these next two. I think are a little bit related. We'll go to the superhuman. I kind of like superhuman a little bit better than superwoman or superman, especially because everyone doesn't identify as a woman or a man. And that's kind of feeling like you have to be doing all of the things, that you have to keep taking on things and juggling things and have more and more roles. So it's kind of that feeling like you have to be superhuman and do all the things. And not only do you have to do all the things and you keep asking to do more, is that you have to do all of them well.
That's
And
yeah.
hard to do all the things and do them well. And keep volunteering to do more of all of the things when you're at capacity. So I feel like this one can drive people in the ground probably relatively quick and burn out quick when you keep taking on more and more responsibilities due to internal drivers.
Yeah. I got tired just hearing the description that you gave. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's relatable for me. I used to be that person, right? Just everything was so and so needs help, so and so needs me, and all the things. And it didn't even necessarily have to be emergencies, right? And I had difficulty prioritizing when to say no because I wasn't prioritizing properly the need that the person had. Like, you don't need me to go shoe shopping with you. You would like for me to be there, but you don't need me for that. And so now I've added yet another thing to my plate, and I'm already at the point of exhaustion, to your point, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I wonder if Brittney or Marcy can relate to that.
Yes, I can relate. I think that again, as Dr. Ericka pointed out, I think it depends on what's happening and where you are. But certainly when I'm starting at a new job, I feel the pressure to accept everything that comes my way. I don't feel that I can say no. And if I say no, it makes me feel as if I'm less than. I feel like I'm not adequate, or I can't take on these things and do them well, when it's really not true. I mean, I can't. It's not really humanly possible, or shouldn't be, but I'm telling myself that I should be able to do it because they're asking it of me. So if they're asking, I should be able to do it. I think that where I am now, at least in my office, I have a lot of latitude to say no, and I do it where I need to. But obviously I do that. I filter through, the importance and the need, but I'm glad that I'm in an office that supports my ability to say no, because I think if I were in a different setting, I would still be feeling the pressure to always say yes.
Yeah. That's great that you have that latitude too, to just be able to, like, yeah, no, I can't get to that right now.
No.
What about you, Marcy?
So I feel like I'm doing a better job of not feeling like I need to be superhuman as opposed to years ago. In fact, we sort of had our GAWL meeting that you came to, Ebony, and we had a speaker. We kind of talked about balance and so forth. And I think this one is not as big of an issue for me. It has been, of course, and it still is sometimes, but I just try really hard. My superhuman issue is balancing family and being a professional. So being a perfectionist and the expert in succeeding professionally while also being an adequate parent to my only child. I've got one shot. So if I don't do a good job with her, I'm out of luck. Like, I don't have a younger kid that I can try and do better with. I just got one. So I've struggled with that. But lately I've really, I think, been able to, maybe it's because she's almost out of high school, I've really focused and tried to be better about, don't always say yes. Don't always, balance and make sure that I'm not shortchanging my family because I'm overextending myself professionally. And so it's actually been very it's very gratifying to see progress in my life with regards to that. But it's something that's still a struggle. You know, we all want to say yes. We all want to think that we can handle and balance everything, and we just have to learn that we can't.
Well, congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. I mean, because that is the struggle. I was I guess it's been about 10 or 11 years ago, and I had just returned back from work from being out, and I was just having all kinds of, I don't want to say panic, but it kind of like not a full-blown panic attack, but I was having anxiety is probably a better word. I felt like from the time that I was out, you know, I had lost ground professionally. Um, in the legal profession, I felt like I had lost ground in the office. I felt like I wasn't performing, you know, well at home. And so I called one of my mentors and I'm like, I'm just not gonna make it. This is too much. I'm just not gonna make it. I can't balance all of these things. It's too much. And what she said to me way back then, I've heard more people say it more recently, but when she said it to me 10 or 11 years ago, I hadn't heard it. And she said, well, Ebony, the trick is you can have it all, just not at the same time. And that was like a light bulb moment. Like, so I don't have to be all things to all people at the same time. And I really feel like, to your point, Marcy, once you come to that place, it kind of makes things a little bit lighter, you know, in terms of, because I felt like, should I leave the legal profession even? Like, I don't know what I'm gonna like, and all of my friends were like, we got to figure out what's wrong with her. She is really anxious right now. And there were some other things that I had to work through that were probably below the surface. But of course, when you're in the tornado, you don't really know that. And that's why it's good when you have good people around you. But I have just tried to reinforce that for myself. Like, yeah, you can have it all, just not at the same time. You're going to have seasons in your life for this thing or that thing, and then you just move on to the next season. And that's been really helpful for me. Where we going next, Dr. Ericka?
We're going someplace, but I want to. There's something you and Marcy said that I don't want to get. I don't want us to slide by. Is that one of the things is that a lot of times we'll talk about these issues in the context of professional work, but especially since we're sitting here having a safe conversation with women, is people feel the same way about their identity as a woman. They'll have all this self-talk about, am I a good mom? I'm not a good mom. I suck as a mom. I'm not as good of a mom. I'm not as good of a wife, or I should be doing this better, personally. And I think it's important that you can look at these things and they can also cross over to your personal life, because then you're trying to juggle or be the perfect mom, or do everything at home perfectly, or know every single thing about everything your kid has for homework, all kinds of ways that this shows up at home. And what you were talking about, Ebony, reminds me, there are two books that I think are phenomenal. I don't know if any of you had read Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes.
No, I haven't. I'm making a note.
And towards the end of that, she talks about kind of like somebody came up to her and was like, oh, you have it all. She's like, no, I don't have a whole lot of help. And then there's a book by Veronica Chambers called Having It All, where it's actually, she interviewed a whole bunch of women and then put together this whole story. Well, not story, but an entire book. And I think one of the biggest things when we're looking at imposter syndrome, because part of this looking at imposter syndrome is looking at this place where you think you should be versus where you are, is especially as women looking at these thoughts of having it all and all these things we should accomplish, is having a moment to really think about what you actually want and what it looks like. Because having it all, air quotes, if you're listening, looks very different for each person, because what each person and what you may prioritize may be different than someone else, and it may change in the seasons. So I just want people to also be open to how these things show up in your personal life. I'd say the next place to go is, since we're talking like this, how about we'll go to the soloist? And that's the person that feels like they have to do it all by themselves. I feel like that's the explanation. You got to do it yourself. It has to be you. And I see that come up all the time where people feel like they have to do it alone. And the driver can be a little different, but it's that feeling like you have to do it alone. And to me, that's another one of those, like the superhuman, that's prone to make you burn out either from home or work. Because if you're doing everything by yourself, the amount of capacity you're using when you could have potentially had help is huge.
Absolutely. And to an earlier point, I don't think, like for me, I recognize that because I have trouble delegating. I'm working on that and I'm a lot better than I used to be, but particularly in like supervisory roles, you have to be able to delegate. You can't be the whole team. But I was thinking about something we were talking about a minute ago, because I feel like men don't have any trouble delegating. I feel like they're going to offload whatever it is in a heartbeat and keep it moving. And so, and there's probably a little something to learn from that and model after. But I wonder, Marcy, if you can relate to the soloist at all.
Absolutely. And I think several of these kind of are interwoven, kind of the expert and the soloist kind of all connect together in my life, that because I think I'm supposed to be the expert and I'm supposed to know it all and I'm supposed to be superhuman and be able to, succeed and be the perfectionist. It's all got to be, but it needs to just be me. I can do it all by myself. The soloist. If I can't do it all by myself, what's wrong with me? Why do I need help? Because Brittney, I see her and she's doing it all herself and she's killing it. So why can't I do it all by myself? Why am I inadequate, in that way? So absolutely, it's something that I deal with on a daily basis. That and I think you're right. I don't think men generally have an issue with that. They're happy to delegate. And women just generally are not. We tend to think we need to do it all. And that kind of relates also in our personal lives, that we feel like we don't want to delegate someone to pick our kid up from school. Why can't we should be able to go pick them up. Sally's mom picks her up from school. So I should balance court and work, and I should be able to have a meal on the table for my family when I get home. And our house should be clean. I mean, it's like, 5,000 people would struggle to do what we think we should all be able to do on our own. And we just don't give ourselves the grace that we would give our friends and explain to them. It's just the way we're wired.
I think that's a good point. Thank you for sharing that. Brittney, can you relate at all?
Yeah, absolutely. To everything Marcy said, everything that you all have said so far about it, I think that it is that notion of, if I delegate, I will say, even being a leader, if I'm ultimately responsible for this thing, if my name is ultimately on it, if I delegate it and they don't do it well, or to this extreme standard that I have, then I have failed, even though I've delegated. So it's like, you know what? I'll do it. Don't worry. Because that way I can control. And that way I think it's that feeling of losing control or not being able to put that perfect stamp on it. I struggle with that too. Sometimes I can say, just feeling like if I can control it, if I can do it, it'll be okay. I don't want someone else to do it. And then it falls on me anyway. And then I look less than perfect because that person didn't do it well to my standard. And now I don't look like the perfect person, even though, again, that's not actually what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying I want to be perfect, but that's ultimately what all the action and the conversation ends up being. So I can totally relate. And even in personal life, as Marcy mentioned, just feeling like, okay, as a girlfriend, why can't, my partner wants to help me. He wants to do all these things for me. He wants to call this company for me if I haven't been able to call them, or he wants to pick up something for me. And I'm like, no, I should be able to get off work or work late and then pick this up and then make us food and then do this and then do that. But why? If there's someone here who can help me, why not allow it? But I think our profession breeds us to feel like we are supposed to be able to do it. And if we can't, it's a weakness, when that's not true, but that's how we feel.
You said a mouthful when you said our profession breeds that. That's a whole mouthful. Dr. Ericka, we have talked about the perfectionist, the superhuman, the natural genius, the soloist, and the expert. When is it time to seek help?
Well, let's see. We kind of didn't make it to the natural genius. That was the last one.
I'm sorry. Yeah, let's do that. Let's cover that.
But we can do quick.
I put a check mark by it and I shouldn't have.
It's all good. It is all good. The natural genius is the person that feels like not only should they be able to do everything, but they need to be able to do it easily. Like everything should come with ease, that if it takes a lot of effort or struggle, then it's a failure. So that's why I love when they put natural with genius, because it's that feeling like you should naturally be able to know and do everything, which nobody naturally knows everything. So I feel like these are things that set everybody up for failure.
It's a setup.
It's a total setup. It's a total setup. It's probably not quite as bad now that we have the internets. So information is more available. I don't know everyone on here's age. I remember life pre-internet very well, when you had to go find an Encyclopedia Britannica and go through the card catalog and hope you found what you're looking for and maybe end up on microfiche.
That part.
Brittney doesn't remember that, but I certainly remember that.
These young people don't know.
Well, I remember the encyclopedias, but I was right at the cusp of access.
Yes, I won't say my age, but I had my first email address when I was in medical school. And we're all like, this email ain't gonna stick.
Right.
Everybody need email. But I'd say, as far as a lot of these, when you need help, there are two answers. One is everybody could use someone to talk to in a safe space, so it doesn't matter what's going on, everybody can use it. Kind of like everyone can in this group can use a primary care doctor and someone that can manage women's health issues. It comes in handy. It's good health maintenance. The second answer is if you are not feeling like yourself, you're feeling overwhelmed, and you just aren't doing well.
Mm-hmm. And so what can we do? Like, how can we identify this maybe in our colleagues, right? So maybe the colleague is in the midst of the tornado. They don't recognize they're in a storm. What kinds of things would we be noticing perhaps if we needed to intervene on somebody's behalf?
Well, I think the things you would notice, it's things like someone showing up late when they used to be on time, or they're missing more days, or they're calling out more. They're irritable, so they're snappy. They're snappy at colleagues, they're snappy in meetings. You notice that there are errors in their work products that used to not be there, which can be an indication of poor concentration. So misspelling, bad grammar, something not being the way it typically would be outside of the range of what you would anticipate. Someone, and this doesn't happen quite as much with men because they don't do that as much, but someone just looks like they're about to start crying, or they start crying in a situation where it just doesn't feel like that should be going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will actually tell you what's going on because they just can't hold it in anymore. But a lot of times it's kind of how they're working, how they're showing up, and their mood.
Okay, that's very helpful. We're going to go ahead and close, but I have to tell folks that if they feel like they need somebody to talk to and they don't already have that person, I'm just going to put it out there. Dr. Ericka is probably who you could start with, right? She is amazing. She holds a safe space. She's funny. But more importantly than that, she cares. She cares. And I think that, like she said, perhaps we're moving to a place where we're going to be checking in on our mental health and our emotional well-being, just like we do with our primary care. There's certain checkups you just get every year. You just get them routinely, no matter what's going on with you. And so it might not be a bad idea for us to start trying to be proactive in that way. And Dr. Ericka, you have a new website, right?
Yes, I do. It's goodwinmed.com, GOODWINMED.com.
So, one last time, if you don't already have somebody that you want to talk to, you might want to start with Dr. Ericka. I came across a quote as we close, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but I thought it was appropriate for the conversation. And it said, "It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you're not." And that really, really resonated with me. And I think that kind of is a good encapsulation of the whole series that we've done here, parts 1, 2, and 3. We're going to close for now, but I will say that if you're not a member of GAWL, we would love to have you join us. We are committed to supporting women and children in our communities, not just women in the legal profession, although that's primary, but women in the community in general. You can go to GAWL.org, and we're spelling GAWL, GAWL, just like Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. And if you're not sure that you want to join, it's okay. Just go on the website and poke around and see what we're about. Something might catch your eye. But if you do want to join, we make it incredibly easy to do so. There is a join button right on the home page, and we'd love to have you join us. I'm going to say goodbye for now, but I want to thank you, Dr. Ericka Goodwin, for coming on. You're always, always a wealth of information. Thank you, Brittney Martin and Marcy Hanks, for sharing your experiences. I know that sometimes it's not easy to share, but I know that there are people who are going to watch this and hear what you've shared and are going to be moved by it and very much helped. And so until next time, go live your best life.